What's going on, dudes and dudettes? So yeah, it looks like the other day, I know I'm a bit behind on this, but didn't really want to put it in the USC news. But yeah, Otani did make history. I think he is now the only player with like 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases in the same season. So I guess that biggest contract ever was worth it, even though he's not going to be pitching this season. But yeah, he did it, and he did it in fashion. I think he had like 3 home runs in that game and multiple stolen bases too. So he just totally crushed it. I'm sure he's still doing pretty good so far as the season's winding down, heading into the playoffs coming up soon. And speaking of that, yeah, I think in that same game or after that, the Dodgers did clinch a playoff spot before that. So they've still been playing. I think they even beat the Padres last night and stuff. So either way, congrats to them, and hopefully they can make some noise in the playoffs coming up in October. And then, yeah, when it came to... I already forgot. And yes, JJ Redick has supposedly named his starters. He said it on a recent podcast he did this last week, saying that it's going to be obviously LeBron, Anthony Davis, Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, and D'Angelo Russell. I guess when it comes to stat-wise, he's kind of more of like a stat and the numbers person, and when that whole team was healthy playing together, at least those 5 players, they had a really good record when they started a game together. So I guess he's just going by that based off the numbers. I'm sure Vanderbilt would have been in there or somebody else if they were healthy, but either way, it looks like it's going to be the same 5 guys as long as they are healthy. I mean, those guys are pretty much one of the healthier guys. It's just the Lakers' depth right now that's still injured heading into the preseason, all that stuff coming up soon, but hopefully they will get healthy sooner rather than later. And the Anaheim Ducks did name a team captain again. I think he's their 9th team captain. His name is Radko Gudas. I was kind of wondering why the 9th team captain, but I guess Getzlaf had been there for a while. Other guys like Timu Solani or Paul Correa, those guys have been the main captain for so long while they were with the Ducks. So I guess that's why they've only had 9 in their almost 30-something years since they've been around, or whenever the first franchise game started in the mid-90s. So either way, congrats to him, and we'll see what he does. That seems like a new name, so he must have been a guy they signed over free agency. But either way, look forward to seeing what he can do with this new and young team for the Anaheim Ducks. And then, yes, the Duke Blue Devils did play this last weekend and finally scored more than 26 points. Their first 3 games, they've only scored 26 points and still were undefeated, but this time they scored quite a bit against Middle Tennessee State. They scored 45 and only gave up 17, which is nice. And I believe their national ranks are really good too. They're number 1 in tackles for a loss, number 2 in sacks, and number 4 in fumble recoveries in all of the nation. And then a couple guys that have been stepping up, Alex Howard, Terry Moore, and Cameron Bergeron have all been stepping up in really nice numbers. They're in the top 5 or top 10 in some of those numbers as well, just solo-wise when you add their numbers up. So yeah, that's pretty good. They're obviously stepping up, like I said, and hopefully they can step up this weekend against North Carolina, a big rivalry game. I know they don't really get to beat North Carolina as much in football, but there's no Drake May. Mac Brown is kind of losing it. I think they ended up losing 70-50 last week to James Madison, who's an okay team, but that's almost like a basketball score compared to a football score. So hopefully Duke can put up some numbers, and that defense, the national defense, can step up in that game. And it looks like that Houston Rockets player now, AJ Griffin, agreed to a buyout, so he is stepping away from basketball. Don't know if this is official full-time, or he's not going to try to go and join another team. It's like if he just wanted to buy out, so he didn't want to stay in Houston. But either way, we'll see what his career ends up holding right now, because it seems to be up in the air at this point. An ex-Duke player, Harry Giles, did sign a 1-year deal with the Charlotte Hornets, so he's kind of returning a little bit to Duke in North Carolina, at least the state, to play for that team. So hopefully he's able to make that roster for that NBA team. Then when it came to the basketball schedule, I know the men's schedule did come out fully. I know we talked about the non-conference pretty recently, but they do play North Carolina twice, and Miami, and Wake Forest, so that was pretty interesting. They do play against Cal and Stanford too, some of the newer teams. I'm pretty sure they play against SMU, but I forgot to check that out. But I was only looking at where they play Cal and Stanford because obviously if they were playing in California, Northern California, I might force myself to go and watch them up there play against some of those bad teams. Stanford is an okay team, but Cal is kind of down in the dumps here and there. They got some okay players here and there at times, but either way, I would still try to go up there. So most likely next season, hopefully that's the case, but either way, looking forward to seeing how Duke does against some of these new foes in the ACC. And for the women's basketball side, the SEC/ACC Challenge opponent came out for the women's team, and it looks like it's going to be basically the team that's been number one for quite a bit in South Carolina from the SEC. So, of course, that game is going to be on ESPN, so hopefully Duke can pull out the upset. You never know, but hoping for the best in that matchup. And then the number 5 overall player, and I believe in the 2025 class on the women's basketball side, Emily Skinner, put Duke in her Final 5 pretty recently. So, yeah, hopefully they got some good standing with her and they could be able to sign another top overall player in next year's class. And then the Duke women's soccer team did beat Clemson 3-1 over the weekend, I believe it was, and they are now ranked number 3 in the nation. So, yeah, that's pretty good for them. So, yeah, they're definitely stepping up, looking way better than North Carolina, in my opinion, who's always had the history of being better on the women's soccer side. But, yeah, at least the Duke women have been stepping up, so that's nice to see. And I want to get through a couple of these Chargers stats that happened right after week 2, but of course, wait a couple of days and a couple more stuff has happened. But I'll get into what had happened before this week 3 game versus the Steelers. So after week 2's victory over Carolina, I believe going after that game, Herbert was like the only player, at least quarterback-wise, making $50+ million who was 2-0 at the time compared to the other quarterbacks that had already lost a game or two. So that was kind of like a good stat. But then a couple other things. I think J.K. Dobbins was officially now leading the NFL after week 2 with like 266 yards. Also on that list was Jordan Mason, Josh Jacobs, and Lamar Jackson in the top 10, which was nice because all 3 of those guys are on my fantasy team. So doing pretty good so far, if you could say that. And then, speaking of Dobbins, yeah, I guess they said when it comes to his total carries, he's ranked number 26 as running backs, but he was still leading the league at that moment in rushing yards. So he wasn't getting that many opportunities, but still leading the league in rushing. So he's obviously doing something right. But like I said, all things had to come to a little bit of a halt in week 3, but I'll get into that after this last stat, because the defense was really good heading into that. I think both the Steelers and Chargers were like 1 and 2 ranked, and I believe the Chargers were leading the league when it comes to points allowed with only like 13 or something like that. But as I mentioned, yes, they did have to play against the Steelers and ended up losing that game 10-20. In that game, Herbert, Bosa, Rashawn Slater, Joe Alt, their rookie tackle, all ended up getting injured. They almost won the game too. It was pretty close, but ended up losing towards the end, which sucked. But yeah, I think it was a really close game heading into that 4th quarter. But all those other guys, the offensive line was already struggling, and then receivers weren't really catching and doing anything really, and even the running game wasn't stepping up, especially Dobbins. He kind of stopped. I don't think he even got over 100 yards in that game, but Steelers defense is really good, so I wasn't that surprised, but it kind of seemed like the Chargers beat themselves up because I think they gave up like a big 50-something yard touchdown to Calvin Austin, of all people, who isn't the Steelers' best receiver, but they gave that up late after the Steelers, I think, scored a field goal to get ahead at like 13-10, something like that. But yeah, after that game, Herbert did leave pretty much right before the ending of that game, and he did do some x-rays. They came back negative, which was nice, and I think even the past couple of days throughout this week he has been light practicing and doing some stuff, but not really doing everything, and it still says he's questionable for that game against the Chiefs. I just hope, like some commenter said during his press interview on one of the comments on YouTube, it's like, sit your ass down and let's see what the backups can do versus the Chiefs. And then especially with all those other guys like Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, they both have like, I think Slater has a pectoral strain and Alt has like an MCL sprain as well. But either way, I think they should let those guys rest, let the backups go. You're most likely going to lose the game anyways versus the Chiefs, and then you'll be healthy enough to go into that next game, I think, is against Denver, who should be an easier team to beat once you're a little bit more healthy. But I think even during that game against Pittsburgh, Derwin James, their starting safety, did hit the tight end Pat Fryermuth up pretty close to his head. I think he kind of led towards his head as well. And I think there was a penalty on that play, but they didn't kick him out of the game or anything like that. But then the NFL decided to suspend him after like a day later for the next game versus the Chiefs, because I guess he's like a repeat person that have those type of high above the head hits to other players, and he's been fined before and all this stuff. So I guess they just said because of reoccurring problems, then they're now going to suspend him, of course, against the Chiefs. So of course the NFL is helping the Chiefs while taking one of the Chargers' best defenders and one of their top players out of the game already, like as if they needed any more help with all the injuries the Chargers are already going through. But so right now, looks like I'll be talking about a loss next week for my for my Chargers. But either way, I guess we can hope that they're able to bounce back and get healthy in due time. And the Chargers this week did sign an ex-first-round wide receiver, Jalen Reagor, to the practice squad. I think they also signed a linebacker, Blake Lynch, who's been off and on the practice squad as well the past year or so. So they signed both those guys, and they had to let go of a tight end in Luke Benson and a cornerback in Nemahia Shelton from the practice squad to make those moves. And I don't know, I guess they might think Joshua Palmer's injury might last a little bit longer, so that's why they signed Reagor. I don't know why he really would, because he was a first-round pick. I liked him in the second round coming out of TCU that year, but Philadelphia picked him up in that first round, and he never really showed anything after that first year. It kind of went down, and every place he's been after that, it's been kind of bad. I think it was recently with the Patriots, so not a really good team either. But I don't know, he has speed. Hopefully he still has speed, and maybe he could use that to help out once Herbert is back and healthy, if he is still on the team at that time. But either way, I guess it's just taking some chances here and there to see what sticks and what doesn't. Joe Ortiz and Jim Harbaugh and doing with the roster, just to see what happens, kind of shuffling guys in and out, especially now with these injuries. So hopefully they can find something that works and it helps them out for the rest of the season. So thanks for watching, people. Like and subscribe. Comment down below. Let me know what y'all think. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.